Welcome to Superhero Spectating with Harold and Hassan. We're a fan based podcast with two non experts exploring superhero fandom. As always, we're happy to have you along for some theories and fun. Welcome to the episode. Heroes, Harold and Hassan. Heroes, Harold and Hassan. Heroes, Harold and Hassan. Heroes, Harold and Hassan. All right, spectators, we're back with the expected review of the Thor Love and Thunder trailer. We're getting to you as soon as our work days would allow. We did watch it earlier, along with the rest of the world, a couple million views. And we had a really passionate debate about the trailer, and we're going to get into it shortly, but I'm excited to share some thoughts. Harold, are you ready to get into it?
I'm down.
All right. Boom. That was the sound of thunder. Feel like we probably need to rewind and throw in some of the spoilers that we've come across for Thor Love and Thunder over the last few weeks. So I'm just real quick, fans, going to come at you with a list of all of the insiders we have so far. Some of these you're going to see in the trailer if you haven't watched it yet. Some of these you may have seen already. We're getting Tooth Thin and Tooth Grinder, the goats in Norse mythology that carry the chariot that Thor's rummaging or ravaging through space on. We're supposed to see the arrival of Silver Surfer, which may prep us for Galactus, but we'll see. We did get the introduction of Zeus in the trailer, which is supposed to allude to Hercules for a possible spin-off regarding the comic adaptation of the Prince of Power. We're supposed to see a new team. We've currently seen the Revengers, we've seen the Asguardians, and we've seen the Avengers. But it seems like that new team that we're going to see might have a lot to do with the Thor Corps, which are apparently being set up ahead of Secret Wars. We're also supposed to see Valkyrie's new power and love interest. We're supposed to see Bass and other mythos, which may tie in some of the characters that we just got in the mid-season finale of Moon Knight. We're supposed to see Gore the God Butcher with the Necro Sword, which for me is really interesting because I just started reading up on the Necro Sword, and it seems like it's related to Null, who's the god of the planet of symbiotes that Venom is from. So I'm really interested in seeing what they're going to do with the Necro Sword if what I've read is accurate, given that we only just got the symbiote in the MCU. A lot of arcs are seemingly going to be covered by Taiki Waititi in this direction that he's taking Thor, but most noticeably, if you saw the last few seconds of the trailer, there's going to be a lot of solid references to the Mighty Thor, which we can get into later, but I believe the synopsis is an instance in which Jane Foster picks up Mjolnir, which we do see at the end of the trailer, and proves herself to be worthy, and then becomes Thor herself. There's supposed to be some allusions made to the Eternals and the Guardians, and Christian Bale is supposed to be casted again. That's all the background we've got so far. Now let's jump into the episode.
So I'd like to start by saying that I'm not too familiar with Norse mythology or Thor comic books. So some of the rumors slash references that were in the trailer I wasn't familiar with. I did hear about Christian Bale being in the movie. So I am excited, being a fan of like the Batman movies, to see him play another comic book character here in the Marvel Universe is interesting to see. Yeah, I think before I even react to the trailer, it's nice to acknowledge that my favorite interpretation of Thor so far has been the character that I saw in Infinity War.
Mm.
And that this character went through a change throughout Endgame because there was a 5-year gap that took this character in a different direction. I wouldn't say different. Not absolutely different, because this trailer does have continuations of themes that we saw in Ragnarok.
Hmm.
But Infinity War, I think, the Russo brothers took a more serious approach to continuing his story from where Ragnarok left off. That I enjoyed following that tone of his story. And he was still very much Thor in that interpretation for that movie, as far as like he was still charming, charismatic, and funny, But there was a sense of respect when he was around, In the scenes that he's in, he's definitely carrying those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's respected amongst everyone in the room in those scenes, except of course when the Guardian Star-Lord's the only one that doesn't respect him. But all the other Guardians see the value in just who he is. Like he's a god. But Endgame took this character and he went through certain experiences that became a catalyst to where he is now. And it's not an interpretation that I'm too fond of trying to follow. So with that bias, there was a lot of things about this trailer that I already had a bias to not liking because I wasn't a fan of the character that we left off with in Endgame
Okay.
already. So I have that bias already, but looking at the trailer without a bias, what I can see is that this movie's title is Thor: Love and Thunder, and I could definitely feel the presence of the love parts in this movie. There's a lot of bright colors. There's a lot of happiness. There's a sense of finding self that is supposed to be a feel good like emotion with Thor.
Mm.
A lot of jokes, and there seems to be a thunder parts of this movie if there are some thunderous or dramatic moments.
Okay. My take on the trailer is that it makes sense. I I thought back to the point you just made about how the Russo brothers used him versus how Taiki Waititi used him in Ragnarok, and my personal relationship with Thor started off a little lukewarm. I didn't hate Thor 1, but I wasn't excited to watch it more than once after I had initially seen it. And I think that the overall fault of Thor 2, which I did watch and fell asleep through my first viewing, was that there was so much lore that came out left field that it was kind of hard to follow. And there were scenes where, in contrast to this movie, there was not just a dark tone, but a lot of dark scenery. They were using dark elves, and I think it tried to play on a bit more of Thor's mythology, but didn't execute it as well. And I think that there was a resurgence of interest in Thor when Thor Ragnarok came around. And even Thor Ragnarok had its own critiques. People didn't think that Ragnarok being the end of the world should be a comic adaptation that was handled with so much laughter. But if you've been around 1500 years, I feel like you've got to be able to laugh. And then all his reasons for laughter were stripped away from him, and we got him back in Thor. Sorry, we got him back in Infinity War as an Avenger because he had to avenge his brother, he had to avenge Heimdall, he had to avenge his people's lost kingdom, he had to avenge his dead mother, and so much of the fragments of his identity that define him as a Thor we knew in the Infinity Saga. So for me, it makes sense that when the snap happened in Infinity War, he died along with half of all of the universe, and his sole purpose became avenging the universe that he failed to save in his miscalculated effort to thwart Thanos. But if you're going to pick up on Thor's story in another movie, he's got to find himself again. He gave up his kingdom to Valkyrie because he felt that she was a better leader, which made sense. We, in our conversation earlier, came to a point where I realized neither of Odin's heirs in the MCU, at least, seem either worthy to be king in Odin's eyes, or once they had proved that they were worthy, they had just been conflicted by other responsibilities they had in their life, or in Thor's case, once he had the opportunity to be king, his kingdom was shattered. I I feel like with Gore the God Butcher and with the Thor corpse and with the return of Jane Foster, there's going to be a lot of movement in this movie, and even just with the look of the gods, I feel like there's going to be a lot of room for character development that has to be balanced out against the Thor that Taiki and the Russo brothers introduced us to. And I think that Gore the God Butcher and any other antagonists that come up are going to bring out a bit more of that Russo brother Thor that we saw. But I wouldn't have personally been interested in watching another Thor that just got blipped into the next phase of his character development. We got him after 1,500 years and we started to see him grow. I want to see him grow out of the circumstance that he's in a realistic way. Even at the beginning of the trailer, we see the Thor that let himself go, working out and getting back into shape, and that to me seems realistic. I'm really happy to see that they didn't cut that out and he just didn't snap his fingers and become a god. Even in Endgame, when he took both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir in his hand and threw back on his suit before he fought Thanos, he looked like a Norse god. He didn't look just like a superhero archetype. And the trailer to me adds a layer of realism that I think we're going to need going into what's a potentially much darker arc for the next few movies we're going to get from Thor Odinson.
I just wanted to add, or just to put this out there, that, you know, Russo brothers' Infinity War interpretation of Thor, because the Russo brothers are also responsible for Fat Thor. And even Fat Thor is not a Watiti. Like, Watiti has to feed off of what the Russo brothers left off with Fat Thor in Endgame.
Fair. I don't want to say what arc they finished because I feel like the problem with Thor having an arc is that he's not mortal. Everyone else's lives are going to end. Thor would still be around. Thor's been around for 1,500 years. So I felt like they had to find a way to humanize him, which they've done in several other movies. And there was probably several different ways that they could have gone about it before the end of the Infinity Saga. But they had to find a way to humanize him and give him a rebirth without something that we'd seen, so that it would mean a lot to the fans to see him become potentially like the most comic accurate Thor we'll ever see. I felt like we got a glimpse of it in Ragnarok, and a lot of people were finally happy with the direction that they were taking Thor in. And I can understand some of the upset, but to the creative team's argument, the Infinity Saga was the end of a lot of viewers in our generation's relationships with these characters. So whatever they did with them afterwards was fair game. They had to kill off the characters in the way that we knew them. That being Captain America's Hope, that being and they end up tying his story back around. So maybe that's not even a fair argument, but
yeah, I was about to say, I feel Falcon and the Winter Soldier show are good continuations of the legacy that Chris Evans Cap left. Like, it definitely found the tone that was appropriate for the character who came before.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I'll agree to that.
And I would say that goes to the character that he was before the 5 years and after the 5 years. You know, like Cap was a very stable character.
Yeah, I just
And I guess we're discovering how unstable a character Thor really is, given all the hardships that he's been through.
Right? But I'm not even sure it's unstable. I mean, like, if you had been alive for 1,500 plus years, how many different versions of yourself would you have become, right? So for him to finally, after his identity
Would
was
you
kind of,
say with age though that you become wiser? Would you think that with age you become wiser? Not regress a little bit? Or there is regression before progression?
I feel like it's more so the latter because Thor that we got after 1,500 years was this haughty soldier who thought he was unstoppable and thought that he, in being heir to the throne, was deserving of all good things. And then we get him grounded on Earth without this tool that proved that he was worthy, and he had to start to establish a new identity on Earth and a new version of himself. And I mean that's 1,500 years of growth. So you would think that he'd be wiser by then. But I feel like the most emotionally mature version of Thor that we saw was in Infinity War when he was speaking with the Rocket, to the point that you made earlier. But then you have to wonder, is that just a dimension of Thor that's like, I think Thor is incredibly intelligent. I think he's his emotional bandwidth is a lot greater than, or complex than, the team or that he's with sometimes makes it out to be. But I don't know. I also don't know if that was just Thor grieving, and if Thor grieving and being vulnerable is what made him seem emotionally mature. I think he went through a lot that the other Avengers didn't have to go through, that they'll never experience. And for him, even though he had been alive for 1,500 plus years, that had all happened in 6 to 12 years back to back. So the pace and the stature of his threats, I don't think they'd ever been so consistently challenging and successful in taking away what made him him. So after they finally won an Endgame, I think he just needed to do away with that identity. So to me, it makes sense. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have been happy with them going another direction. I just think that Thor needs more writing that we're gonna get. And for the test screenings that have come out so far, for them to get standing ovations, if those standing ovations are true, then I'm not worried about the movie. I think that even if the teaser left a lot more to be discovered or a lot more thunder to be explored, maybe they're just trying to make sure that they don't tease too much so that the people that walk into the theater are very happy. And you have to also keep in mind his movies come out in July, not too long after Doctor Strange. I personally feel like all of the trailers or teas let me say that. All of the teasers that we've gotten for this new saga worth of movies, in my opinion, don't live up to the hype of what the actual movie is. I don't think that the teaser that we got for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness initially after immediately after watching Spider-Man No Way Home is going to live up to how well the movie actually does. I don't remember the teaser for Spider-Man No Way Home living up to what the movie actually was. It was more so the people's hype behind it. And they came out after a while, but I feel like there's also a risk of the movie actually being so good, or the anticipation for it actually being so good that it overshadows the movie coming before it. So when I shared the trailer on Facebook earlier today, my comment was I thought they were going to drop it after Doctor Strange 2. Had they dropped this after Doctor Strange 2, that would have made more sense to me, because now you've seen all the possibilities of a multiverse and all these different storylines being told. So everything that we might see in Thor Love and Thunder would also seem more connected to me, but at the same time, they wouldn't have to worry about people sidelining their interest in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. One thing I'd like to say though is that I had a different interpretation of the Doctor Strange teaser. And I think part of it has to do with, I think sometimes your anticipation for a movie comes from where you last seen the character.
Hmm.
And for Doctor Strange, even before his next movie comes out, before having even seen the trailer, I was already sold because I was a fan of Doctor Strange in No Way Home and when I last saw him in Endgame, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't a fan of Thor already, there was already a bias for me to whether I may or may not like, just because of the direction they had already taken the character.
I
Versus
agree.
with you said you weren't too excited with Doctor Strange. For me, it was like
No.
they could
I
have
was
shown
excited with
anything.
Doctor Strange. I'm excited
No,
to watch his
for the
movie.
trailer, after the
Yeah,
trailer.
yeah. That
Yeah,
initial
yeah.
teaser didn't do it for me.
And for me, it did simply on the notion that I like the character and I like I just I enjoy the interpretations that we see of this character.
For sure.
You know,
I think my
so I'm already
over.
looking forward to what's going to happen next. Even if I, even if you've only shown me a little bit, I'm just like I want to follow this character because I like this character.
And I think that was the most disappointing part to me in hearing your initial thoughts on this teaser is because Thor was a part of everyone's big three, even though I think in the Infinity Saga he was tail end of the big three up until Ragnarok came out. And I feel like for a while he was sitting there at the top as one of your favorite characters, and you would think that you'd be super excited about seeing one of your favorite characters on screen with another movie. But kind of like me with The Flash, I am not excited to see his movie. I think they've drawn out the anticipation so long for what this movie can be that even though I'm seeing reviews of good reception, I'm not eager to watch it. Which is saddening because I was a hardcore Flash fan, and I don't want my buddy to come up on a superhero spectating opportunity and be drawn away from it because of the teaser. Thor's writing in general has been consistently sending him on an upwards trend of likable, with the exception of Thor: The Dark World, and then that's not even on him. That's just on the team that wrote him. But
I think that's a good point. I want to piggyback off of that because Thor was not a character that I cared for. You know, it took me a while to watch Thor 1, even longer to watch Thor 2. And I didn't even watch Thor 2 until after I saw Ragnarok. You know,
mm,
Ragnarok is what made me interested in the character. And as I said, Infinity War made me like the character even more. Even more. Endgame just regressed my liking for the character because 5 years is a long time, and you know a character can go through a lot of changes in that time, and not being connected to those changes
yeah,
affects how I feel about the character because it also affected the way I feel about Hulk. He went through a lot of changes in that time that I didn't get to witness, and because I didn't get to witness those changes, them showing me that he's just Professor Hulk feels a little empty.
I feel
It
that.
feels like well, at least for Hulk, it felt like this was the direction he could go in. We literally just missed all that. But for Thor, there's certain parts in it where I feel the pieces don't fully add up because Thor even showed a sense of maturity at the beginning of Ragnarok. Yeah, at the beginning of Ragnarok, when he was going back and forth with Surtur, but he knew his mission at hand. He knew what he was there for, and even his encounter with Loki in Asgard was a very mature approach than we've ever seen him deal with Loki in previous movies. And even the way he speaks to Loki within Ragnarok is a very mature approach to his brother, you know?
Yeah, no,
Like his brother faked his death again. He's just like he was able to talk to him as his brother, and he showed a sense of maturity then that I feel Loki would have been disappointed to see him in the game, bro.
that's
To see what he
interesting.
become. I think maybe that's what it was. Maybe Thor became this low because it was for the first time that he lost his brother. Like he can lose anybody, but the one that's really gonna affect him the most is his bro.
Yeah, because they've always been a balance to one another, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I
So
mean that's
accept
my
that.
point. Like it's a logical conclusion that the fans unfortunately have to reach for. But the problem is the writing. The problem is the blip, and they have not come back to it in the way that they should. But think about how many different losses he had. We saw him lose his kingdom. We saw him lose the last opportunity to formally lead his people. He lost his father. He lost his sister that he just got. He lost his mother. He watched Loki die in his arms again. And then he watched Heimdall, his best friend, die. And then he had to watch half of the universe die because of his mistake. I and and he didn't have Loki this time around. So seeing him post death of the Thor we knew uh, be so unraveled makes a lot of sense to me. And for it to be a version of himself that he hasn't seen after the effect that the last 12 years on Earth have had on him makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, I mean, without all of those characters in his life, without Jane too, and then without Loki, what does that do to him? But I personally think that what we're gonna see, and it was a very brief clip from the teaser, but I personally think that what we're gonna see is Thor reminiscing about the 9 to 10 realms and some of his glory days and some of the things that made him happy and in him trying to find himself again. And while he's ravaging through space, I think he's going to try and head back to where the gods, including Zeus and Hercules, used to be. And then he's going to see that there are hardly any gods left. And I think that's going to be the beginning of his descent back into some realism and a more grounded path. And I think that seeing the gods dead is going to trigger a look back at the Thor that we saw previously, the Infinity War Thor. And then I think he's going to try and bounce back. I think that he's going to continue to fight, but as he tries to find more and more of himself, he's going to be torn by all of the war that he's seen. And he's going to realize that he can't escape all of the loss that he's dealing with and all of the grief. And I think he's just got to live with it, hopefully in a healthy way. And I think him seeing Jane, one of the people that he also lost, I think that's going to bring a bit of him back. And I'm pretty confident we're going to get Loki in this movie too. We're going to get Loki in the Multiverse of Madness. It would be a huge missed opportunity if they didn't have him in Thor Love and Thunder. And I think once some of those pieces of his life start to come back together, then he's going to be a bit more emotionally prepared to not just reach Gore the God Butcher, but actually challenge him. I don't know if he's going to do it with his fist. I don't know that he thinks he needs to take problems head on anymore. In the trailer, he'd put down Stormbreaker, so we'll see. Maybe it'll be about a third of the way through the movie or halfway through the movie before he picks it back up, but I'm interested. And it's only the teaser. We've got 2 months, 2 months more to go. I'm sure we'll see a lot more thunder and a lot of hype. You have any closing thoughts?
No, I think I got it all.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of good content coming your way, but feel free to comment on our polls when we post these episodes. Reach back out with anything that you're interested in seeing and let us know who you want us to cover next. But until next time, happy spectating. It's Heroes, Harold, and Hassan. Boom. That was the sound of thunder.